are so honored to have with us Sonal Shah, the founding executive director of the Beek Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University. Previously, Sonal also served as deputy assistant to the President of the United States and was the founding director of the White House Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation.
In addition to all of that, she spent 7 years at the U.S. Department of Treasury, where she was an international economist working on development issues, including post-conflict development in Bosnia and the Asian financial crisis and poverty reduction in Africa. She then was at Goldman Sachs and Google, while simultaneously co-founding Intercore, a nonprofit building a new generation of socially conscious global leaders. Sonal Shah is a senior fellow at the Case Foundation and the Center for American Progress, and she is also on the board of social finance at the Washington Area Women's Foundation.
Please put your hands together for Sonal Shah.
I don't care what anyone says, it's always hard to hear yourself being announced and to see your picture up on these screens. So before I start, let me see a show of hands. How many of you are in high school? How many of you are juniors and above? Yeah. All right. How many of you are in college? From college. How many of you are working? And where are all the volunteers? Who are all the volunteers? Give them a round of applause. So first of all, I want to thank Harsha, Shikhar, and Priya. Thank you for the introduction. It's always great to hear it. But you always feel better about yourself when someone introduces you. But thank you, and thanks for everything that y'all are doing. More importantly, congratulations to all of you. 750 people at a convention on 4th of July, that's pretty cool. So give yourselves a round of applause. I don't know that I planned that far ahead on 4th of July ever. So it's great to see many of you and to see all of you coming here. And more importantly, coming for the purpose that you are coming together for, which is great. To celebrate your heritage, to understand your heritage, to have a conversation with your friends, your colleagues, people you may not know, but really to talk about the issues that you care about is actually pretty important. And I don't think we always take enough time to do that. So congratulations, and congratulations to the organizers for actually making this happen. I also want to congratulate all of your parents for making this important. So give them a round of applause. What we forget sometimes is the people who made us who we are and who make it possible for us to do the things that we do. So to be able to host a convention for all of you, 750 of you, and to give your parents giving you the freedom and the energy and the ability to set up this convention, but also to participate is actually kind of cool. And I'm not sure we always think about why that's so important, but it is actually very important because they're the ones that create those steps that allow us to succeed. And so the fact that they're willing to create these steps for allowing you all to succeed is actually pretty important. So I want congratulations to all of them. Before I start my talk, I want to actually start with a video because I think it'll preface the whole purpose of this conversation that I want to have with you all. So I'm going to let the video go ahead and start, and then I'll come back up in just a minute. tell session a little bit, and I think many of you heard him speak yesterday, right? He was cool, wasn't he? Let's give him a round of applause. He, in my mind, represents what fearlessness is about. And I'll go through a little bit of it, but when you think about fearlessness, it's always easy to think about all the big things, you know, all those big ideas, set big audacious goals, experiment early and often, but apply it to a person, and it begins to become real what that means, what it means to be fearless. And every single day, every single moment, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, once you graduate, once you start working, once you have family, everything in our life is driven by what's next. What am I going to do? What's the next thing I have to accomplish? What's the next thing I need to do? How do I go do that thing? Sometimes we don't always put a finger on it, but sometimes it's out of fear that we might fail. I need to accomplish it because if I don't do that, I fail. If I don't succeed and get to the best college, whatever the term best means, I have failed. If I don't get the job that I want, I have failed. And you see, we're drummed into that. It's drummed into us. I have the same problem, right? Grew up here, went to high school, went to college, got a job, did all of those things. You look at my resume and you're like, okay, she worked at the White House, she's worked at Google, she's worked at Goldman. It's easy to talk about fear when you've already done all those things. But we're driven by it every single time. And the big question that we have for ourselves is, what are we going to do to get beyond that? And it starts with you. It starts with you as yourself. Are you confident in who you are first? It does not matter what the world thinks about you, but are you confident in who you are? That's being bold. Are you bold about yourself? Not the pompous confidence. Not that I can tell everybody how important I am. I'm going to show everybody how important I am. But the quiet confidence that you're comfortable in the decisions that you make on a daily basis. It might go against the grain. You might not do what is supposedly successful. That's bold. That's setting bold, audacious goals, being uncomfortable and saying, I can go accomplish that, whether it's someone who starts their own business, whether it's someone that starts a nonprofit, whether it's someone that leaves their job because they feel like there's something better for them to do. That's a bold, audacious goal. Do you have that comfort in yourself to be comfortable doing that for yourself? That's what matters. The second part of that was really thinking about experiment early and often. And what does that mean? It means trying things. It means testing them. It means seeing if it might not work for you or if it might work for you. I probably did 2 or 3 jobs before I finally found the third job that worked for me. Not every job mattered to me. Not it didn't work for me. I didn't like the people. I didn't really like the job. I started off as a consultant after college. I hated doing PowerPoint. Hated it. I know you guys are really good at it, but I suck at it. And I figured that out pretty quickly. It's like, I don't really want to go to work every day and do PowerPoint because I'm not good at it and I don't really like it. But I also realized I didn't like the job. I looked at the people above me and I didn't want to be them. That's not what I wanted my life to be about. So it's trying and testing little things, testing a job here, trying it there. Sometimes it's a little bit out of the realm of what your parents want you to do, but it's okay to do it. You do it in college. You go to a club. You go join an organization. You might go play intramurals. You might go do other things that are not just in the level of success, the linear level of success. Get the right grades, get the right job, move on to the next thing. Well, that's good. It's important, but that's not enough. So experimenting early and often matters a lot because I think sometimes we think, and how many of you get asked this question, what are you going to be when you grow up? How many of you know what you want to be when you grow up? Right? There's a few of you out there, congratulations, I wish I had been you. But many of us don't know. We get to college and you realize sometimes that that's not what I want to be. I went through all of that and I realized that's not what I want to do. And that's okay, because I think we're asked to think about it and know it. And I don't know that we always know that, but experiment. Make failure matter. So what if we fail? I have failed multiple times in my life. I didn't do well in a job. I didn't get great grades. I didn't do so well in a class. It happens. And it didn't stop me from figuring out what I wanted to do. I didn't do well in certain classes, but I had to figure out if those were the right things for me to do or whether it was something else that I needed to learn about myself. I didn't do so well in certain jobs. I've learned for myself what types of jobs I need to take and the types of people I need to work with. It's easy to look at somebody's resume and someone's bio and think they are just successful without ever having failures. We don't ever talk about failure, but failure matters. And as long as you keep learning from failure, you will continue to do better. Sometimes we believe there's some natural ability that we're just the best that we're ever going to be at all times. But what we do is we learn from it and we say, okay, that didn't work for me, I'll try it again. Make it matter, don't give up. That's probably the biggest issue here. When you say make failure matter, it's like don't give up. Reach beyond your bubble. In today's world, with social media, with all the information that you have, it's knowing that you by yourself can't do this by yourself. Ask for help, work with other people, collaborate, work together. Sometimes we live in our country and we feel like it has to be ourselves. We have to do it on our own. We have to make it work. We're going to succeed on our own. It's about ourselves. It's not about ourselves. It is about the people that join up with us, and that matters a lot. Who joins you, why they join you, because collectively we'll do a lot more than individually. Individually we'll do great. Collectively we'll be awesome. And this convention is a great example of it. It takes a collection of people to make this work. It's not just one individual person, it's everybody working together. Those that are working on audio visual, those that are working on programming, those that are working on speakers, they all need to work together in order to make something happen. And collectively, it matters that we do it together. Let urgency conquer fear. What are we waiting for? Tomorrow, when I succeed, I'm gonna go do X. When I make my first $1 million, then I'll go talk about doing something good. When I make $2 million, then I'll really think about doing something good. But really, the lifestyle I need to lead needs me to earn $5 million, therefore that's what it's going to take to do something good. What are we waiting for? When is that tomorrow going to come if we don't do it today? Be the best at what you are today and do it better today. Don't wait for tomorrow. We're always waiting for that right moment. And there is no right moment. The right moment is when you in your heart know it's the right thing to do. When you know it's the time to go do something. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about myself in the process of all of this, right? Why did it work for me? See, I did grow up with my parents telling me you had to get all your A's in school. 92 wasn't good enough. Why didn't you get 100 on that math test? Right? You hear it, right? It's like, it's just math. How can you miss the class? How can you miss the point? Go check it. But what I learned is I didn't have a plan. My parents always wanted me to have a plan. What are you going to do 5 years from now? What are you going to do after you graduate? What are you going to do? I didn't know that. So you know what? I kind of took it as it came. I got my first job. I really wanted to move back to Houston, which is where I grew up, because my brother is 10 years younger than me, and that's where I moved to. I took a job that got me to Houston, because that was the primary reason. The job was kind of the secondary reason I needed a place to work. But what I learned in that job, as I told you, it was a consulting company. So I didn't really like PowerPoint, and so I kind of stuck around for 1.5 years because my brother was there and I got to hang out with him. But what I learned there, which is actually the most important things, I learned how to program. This was in 1990. Wasn't that cool then? Much cooler today. But I learned how to do programming. And that skill has carried through multiple jobs throughout different parts of my life. I wouldn't have known it then, but I learned it. But that's something that I was able to use. I left that job to go to grad school because I thought what I wanted to do was get my PhD in economics. So I got to economics, started to work on my PhD, third year in, didn't really like it. It's like I was going to become an expert in one variable. Didn't sound that interesting. So I left that. I didn't quite have a plan. I took a job. I actually took a bunch of little consulting assignments. I just did a little bit of programming for people here, a little bit of programming for people there. It made my parents really uncomfortable because I didn't know what I was going to do. I lived on people's couches. I traveled when I ran out of money, until I ran out of money, and then I came back and got another gig. And then I got my first job that was meaningful to me. I got the job at the Department of Treasury as an economist. I didn't really know what the job was going to be. I didn't really understand what that meant. But the coolest part about that job was the risks I was able to take and the willingness to push beyond myself. What I learned in that job is to just do the best that you can do no matter what. It didn't matter where it was going to lead to because I didn't know what it was going to lead to. I was just an economist. So the first opportunity came to me in 1995. We had just finished bombing in Sarajevo. The United States had just finished bombing in Sarajevo. Somebody asked if I wanted to move to Sarajevo to help set up their central bank. That to me was my bold, audacious goal, to just say, sure, I'll do it. I was 26 years old. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how to set up a central bank. I didn't know anything about a central bank. I knew the economics of it, but I never lived in a post-conflict country. I never lived in a place where the bombing had just finished and we had to rebuild. So the people who were the most bold and audacious to me were my parents. The willingness for them to say, go ahead and go do it. It's okay. They didn't know what it meant either. They had seen Sarajevo in the news, they had seen the bombing in the news. That's like today going to Syria. I give them that credit because while the risk was great for me, the risk was even greater for them. To see their kid go do something like that at the age of 26. So I lived there for 2 years, 3 years, came back, and there was a big crisis taking place at the time for you all. It's kind of like the crisis that you saw in 2008 in the United States with the financial crisis. It was like that in Asia. So I moved to Indonesia for 6 months, where there was a lot of fighting going on. Again, I give a lot of credit to my family for sticking up with that. But you keep learning in the process of all of these things. I then left the government after 7 years, realizing that, okay, I'd reached what I wanted to do there. I didn't know what I wanted to do next, but I needed to leave. And my brother, sister, and I had always been thinking about what is it we can do together to do something in the world. And we've been thinking about service for a long time. This was in 2001. Why can't we set up a program to allow people of Indian origin to go serve in India for 1 year? You can go to the Peace Corps, you can go to the Jewish Volunteer Corps, you can go to other things, but there was no such thing for Indians, so why couldn't we set it up? So we pooled all of our savings, the three of us together. My brother had just graduated from Harvard, my sister was a U.S. attorney in San Diego, and I had just left Treasury. We had $50,000 collectively, we put it all together, and we started a nonprofit called Indicor. Today, no matter what you say my accomplishment is, that is probably the single best thing I will ever do, and all of my life I will try to top that only. You see, we believed that as a society, as Indians, we could actually do something to change the world. If you had the time to go to India to understand your heritage, understand service, then you could come back and change the world around you. Not about living in India, it was about what you could do to change the world around you. But it started with you as a person and why it matters. It was the hardest thing we ever did. Because first you have to learn how to get along with your siblings, because I fight with them all the time. Second, your family, your friends, and your parents have to believe in you, because all three of us quit our jobs at the same time to start this organization. You think it's hard to do it one, try all three at the same time. There's only three of us. And then our family put up the money. Outside of our $50,000, everybody else was family and friends. So they had to believe in something. My brother moved to India for 10 years. My sister moved to India for 7 years. The single group of people that argued against us for the most were the Indians themselves. The people in India said, why would you come back to this country? It's a waste of time. India is popular today. It was not popular in 2001. Every time we flew into India, they would say, why are you wasting your time here? You're wasting your time. The second group of people that didn't believe in it, the parents. Why would my child take a year out of their life to go do service in India? And my question to all of you, and this is the point I want to make consistently, what is a year in your life? You're going to work 65 years of your life. At what point in your life are you going to say, God, I wish I'd worked 66 years instead of 65 years? Right? But the 1 year seems like such a big decision at this point. If I take a year off, God, what's going to happen to my life? What's my trajectory going to be? What am I going to do? It's a year. It is a year that is the most meaningful year you will have because you will serve, you will learn, and you will learn so much more about yourself. And you will learn from those communities around you who give you more than you give them. They will give you more than you will give them. You go to a poor community in India. Somebody is willing to give you their food for the day because you are a guest in their house. We don't think about it. When they serve you tea, and you go to the jhupparpattis, and they serve you tea in those huts, somebody used their daily wage to buy milk to make you tea. How many of us are willing to give that up? How many of us are willing to give up a meal? Thank you. How many of us are willing to give up a meal on a daily basis? We have one here, 2, 3. See, we've got quite a few. Grace, to give up a meal a day to make sure that somebody can get something. But they do it consciously. If you see a bangle that they like, they'll hand it to you. Because they feel it's important. What I learned in India was as much as I thought I was going to serve, I learned what service meant. That's what we learn when we go for the year. No matter where you go, whether you go to India, whether you go to Africa, whether you go to Latin America, I don't care. It's what you learn in service that matters. It was profound. It's profound. The third group of people that didn't believe in us were you guys yourselves. Why Indians? Why should Indians go with Indians? That's the single greatest question we got from all students. Let everybody else in. It shouldn't be just about Indians. The reason we did Indians is because we were Indian. We wanted to touch our own community first, and then we can worry about other communities. But if we can't do ourselves what we ask others to do, what's the point? We come from a heritage that's steeped in understanding, not tradition. I'm going to take tradition out for a second. In understanding why things matter, why we do things differently. That heritage matters. And we wanted to understand that. So that Indicor has been running for 14 years. We made the next bold decision. The next bold decision we made was this year is our last year of Indicor. As it stands as an organization today, we will rethink what it comes out to in the next couple of years. But the reason we made that decision was at the time when we started, service didn't matter in India. Today, there's at least 15 to 20 other organizations that are starting service organizations, or have started service programs. Many of our fellows are doing it themselves. And we felt what we wanted to catalyze we had done. We made service valuable, we made service important. Now it's time to go on to the next thing. We don't need to just keep an organization going for the sake of keeping an organization going. Big risk, because a lot of people will say, why would you leave just when you're successful? Because we don't need more organizations for the sake of organizations. What we need is to think about the next thing. What should we be doing more? How do we push ourselves to be even more uncomfortable? Because we're comfortable. In my personal life, other things have happened, right? I worked at Google, worked at Goldman Sachs, worked at the White House with President Obama. and have now joined Georgetown University as a professor and run a center on social impact. All of those things are different experiments. None of those things are defining moments. They're defining moments only in that we keep continuing to learn as to what we can do to make a difference in the world around us. And what's my purpose? That's constantly the question to ask. What should I do to make a difference in the world around me? So I want to leave a few thoughts for you, and then we can open it up to questions. I certainly hope you all will ask me questions, because it is the part that makes me the most uncomfortable, but it's actually the most important part of this, is asking questions. A few things for you to think about. One, be comfortable in being uncomfortable. It's okay not to know the answers. It's okay to take a little bit of risk. It's okay to take a calculated risk. But don't just get comfortable. The traditional lines of linear success are not the only lines of linear success. When we look at the big people that we want to emulate, or we talk about, or we think are doing cool things, whether it's Martin Luther King, or whether it's Gandhi, or whether it's Obama, or whether it's other people, what we think about is that their lines of success aren't linear. Sometimes you make a variety of different choices to get to different places, and enjoy the moment, appreciate the moment, learn from the moment. It matters to learn. Second, look around and understand and learn. I think sometimes, and I live in the world of innovation. I am the person that talks about innovation. Innovation is important. Technology is critical. We're learning more, we're disrupting more, but don't forget tradition. History teaches us things over time. There are reasons we were doing things, not just the tradition of why we were doing it, but the reason behind that tradition matters a lot. And those things sometimes we tend to forget. Wisdom teaches us. Learn from wisdom, innovate around it. Don't stop innovating, but don't dismiss wisdom. That's what your parents offer, that's what your grandparents offer, that's what your teachers offer, that's what your professors offer, that's what people in life offer, is a little bit of tradition and wisdom to then continue to innovate and keep changing. We still have to change. We still have to change the world around us, and I urge you to keep doing it. But don't forget what the learnings and the understandings were and why people are doing things the way they are, not just what they're doing. Third, calm down the time issue. Time is relevant, but time also is irrelevant. It's constant. 45 years, 50 years, I've already been working 30 years. There's so much you can do, and I've had 5 careers in 30 years. You can do so much more. Don't worry about trying things, don't worry about testing. It's okay. Time changes, you change with time. But don't get worried about being the youngest person to be X or the youngest person to be Y, or the fastest time to graduate from college, the fastest time to graduate from grad school. So what? So you're going to work longer? So think about time in terms of what you learn. Don't think about time just in reaching the end goal. And finally, look around you and don't forget the small things. Those small acts of kindness, those small places that you go, the people you see, the things that you do. Look at them because they're a lesson for you. Don't forget to do the small acts of kindness because they matter. Take the risk. Make a bet, have faith. And then the final thing I want to tell you guys is change the world. Because we all can sit here and feel comfortable, but I want to put 3 things in front of you that you should think about. 1, the world water crisis. We are running short on clean water in the world, and we are not thinking about it because we're comfortable that we have access to it on a daily basis. You see it, you take a shower, you can do all of those things. The water table in India itself, in just one part of India, Gujarat, has dropped 100 feet in a decade. That's clean water. California doesn't have enough clean water to supply its population. The environment, water, all of those things matter. You guys have to do something to make that world a better place. Don't get too comfortable. 2, Humanity matters. We look at these crises and they're just something on TV. You watch what's going on in Syria, you watch what's going on in other parts of in Egypt, you watch what's going on in India, you watch. It matters. It's not just about what's happening there, it's about what's happening in your backyard. 1/3 of the African American population in the United States has gone to jail. Males. What are we doing to change that? What is our role in that process? Why aren't we thinking about it? Just because we're comfortable? The Indians are doing well, so what? We live in a world that is bigger than us. We want to show what leadership is, then act on it. Humanity matters. Somebody's tweeting. Finally. How are you going to be that change for yourself? How are you going to look at the world differently from the size that you sit in? See, Gandhi's quote, "You have to be the change that you want to see in the world," is deeper than I have to act on being different. It's also how I'm going to see the world from a different set of eyes. When I see something that's an injustice, it's not about that person, it's about how I'm going to do something about it. Don't be angry. Anger doesn't change the world. There's a lot of angry people. We're angry at what's happening. We're angry at the world. We're angry at the president. We're angry at a lot of things. Who cares? How are you going to do it with faith and love? Because that's what the change is. The change isn't about us. The change isn't about changing somebody else. The change is about us changing the way we choose to see the world. Again, congratulations on the huge convention. Congratulations on all the things that you are. And ask me whatever question you want, everything's on the table. But make sure that the choices that you make are the choices that you want to take, not the choices that you feel like you have to take, because that's what matters. Thank you. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Hello.
Yeah. Can you give your name also, if you don't mind?
Okay, my name is Rahul. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but I have a really interesting question. What would you do when there are conflicts of interest? You want to help people, and at the same time you want to earn a lot of money.
You want to what?
You want to help people, but at the same time you want to make a lot of money.
Sure.
So it's a conflict of interest. What would you do in that case?
Great question.
And also, one more thing. Were you working simultaneously when you were trying to make this organization, the service company?
Yeah.
So, don't you think it would have been, I mean, if your interest was more towards helping people, don't you think it would have been worthwhile if you left your job and just worked towards helping people instead of doing two things at the same time?
Great questions. Those are great questions. So I'll start with the second first and then go to the first. So there are three of us working on this at the same time, my brother, sister, and I. My brother and sister actually did quit their jobs. We needed, in order for us to continue to pay 50% of the costs ourselves, we didn't want to raise all the money from outside, so we want to make sure that we could run an organization. One of us needed to work. So the way it worked is I gave about 50% of the donations into Indivore every year while I worked, and then they would run the organization, and I'd spent 2 months a year in India, which was the decision that we had made together. So it was a very conscious decision. We could have all quit, but then one of us, we would always be raising money from the outside, which was a little bit more difficult for us. We wanted to run an organization that we wanted to do our way and not be dependent on outside money the whole time. So that was the decision we made. You're right. The conflict between making money and doing good is a perceived conflict. So the way I say, what I think is, I don't think you should not make money. So I hope what you don't take away from this is I shouldn't make money. By all means, make the money. But how you make that money matters. Are you consciously treating people well? Are you doing it in a way, and you just look at the principles of, look at the principles of Jainism, right? Are you doing it in a way that doesn't hurt somebody? Are you doing it in a way that looks at the least harm? Are you making sure you're not taking ideas from other people and making them your own? And not giving them credit. There's lots of ways to make money. I've lived in all of them. But it's how you make that money that matters, because that's what's going to change. Right now, the end goal is money. The end goal isn't how I do it. And so the process matters. So I don't think you should not make money. I think you should make money. I think you can also give to people who are trying to do the right things. There's nothing wrong with that. But as you give, make sure you have faith in those people that are also giving their time and their life. Because we tend to want to tell them how to do their job, as opposed to allowing them to do what they need to do to learn from that also. Just because you've made the money doesn't mean you're the only one that knows how to do it. And I see this in my life on a constant basis where people want, because they've become very wealthy, they want to tell you how to live your life differently. But it's okay to do that. So I don't think you should not do that. Make your money, do it well, do well for yourself, but also don't forget society and the process. And don't wait till you become so wealthy to give back. Also give it in time. But it's a great question.
My question is basically...
Your name, please?
Oh, Shauna.
Can you stand up?
Sure. So for a lot of the things that you're talking about, a big part of the decision to do something is deciding to quit something else. And I guess my question is, how do you make those decisions to quit your job or to end your nonprofit or whatever? How did you make some of your quitting decisions?
Great question. Usually there's a moment in time in your own mind where you're ready to move on to the next thing. It's not like it's an overnight
Decision, and I sat in Nemo's session this morning, and it's not like it's an overnight question of we're just going to quit. So the Indicor question for us has been going on for 5 years. We've had this conversation every year for 5 years, and the decision and the timing was right where we came to that conclusion together with the group of Indicor fellows. We didn't just make a decision, but it was a process by which you do it. When I've left jobs, it's been a process. It's like, okay, time is coming. Okay, I should be thinking about it. Okay, I've thought about it. And it is moments in time where the right thing comes along. Sometimes it's a transition, it's not quitting. I didn't always quit. Sometimes I was moving from one thing to another. The timing was right. Indicor was right because I was leaving one job, moving on to something else, and the timing worked for that. So there's no perfect time, to be honest, but I think the willingness to be able to say, okay, my time has come, is also a comfort. It's knowing yourself enough to know when the right time is for you to move on to the next thing. And that's what matters. Sometimes you may not move on because you think the place where you are at is the right place for you to be, and that's okay. There is no wrong answer in that. You might decide that the place I'm at is where I'm going to make and have the greatest impact. For you, that's great. Don't change it. For me, it was slightly different. But in order to have an impact in the world, sometimes we're going to have to give up something. And I think what we forget sometimes is that we only look at the doors that are in front of us. It's like, if I walk through that door, I'm closing these other doors. What we forget sometimes is when we walk through the one door, there's a whole set of doors beyond that we have to open, and that are open to us. But we're afraid to do that sometimes, so don't be afraid of that, because once you open that door, there's another set of doors for you to look at. Once you walk through that door, there's a whole set of other doors beyond that. So don't let fear be the reason you don't leave. Be because you want to do it. Don't make it about fear.
Hi, my name is Hidali. My question is related to goal setting and this idea that I really appreciate that you brought up. We're told that we should know what we want to do, we should know what our passion is, and sometimes that gets translated to a thing, be a doctor, be a lawyer, and it can be something bigger than that. You know, I want to work in education, or I want to work in some other field. And so I'm wondering if you had something more like the latter, even if you didn't have a career with a title that you knew that you wanted to do, and how that guided your goal setting when you had to make these decisions of, you know, was there a bigger thing, or were you thinking in smaller increments of this is the next thing I want to learn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't think my parents actually appreciated any choices that I made until I went to go work for the White House. I don't think they understood what my career was about in any way, shape, or form. I was like, okay, so when I got the job in the government, I was like, oh, thank God you got a job that's stable. That was what the community said, right? And it's good look, I think you guys have more options today than you've ever had before. If you want to go work in education because that's where you want to do it, then go do it. Go do it well, be great at it. Don't do it halfway. Don't be like, I'm in it, but my parents are mad, therefore I gotta go do something else. I gotta keep one leg in, one leg out. All in. Because all in matters. And when you do that well, people see it. So Wendy Kopp, who started Teach for America, is a great example. Out of graduate school, she had this idea. She went all in. It's 25 years later that everybody knows about Teach for America. 25 years ago, it was just an idea. But it's all in, all the time. You make it work. If you want to change the education system, all in, you gotta learn about it. It's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard place. You see, the reason there's social problems in the world is because they're hard. People change, ideas change, things change, it happens. It's not because dumb people have been working in this space. The teachers are smart. Many of them have been there even in bad times and good times. We don't want to. They're not just the bad guys. But it's hard. The situations change. Variables are constantly changing. So trying to make change is hard work. It's not easy work. In my mind, it's much easier to make money. I can count the bottom line. Did I make money or did I lose money? Where do I need to cut dollars? Where do I need to gain dollars? How do I do that? You make very simple decisions when the bottom line is clear. It's in the red or it's in the black. Changing a mindset, that's hard. Changing our own mindsets, even harder. So it's not easy. I've made those decisions. So for example, when I left the government, it made my parents very uncomfortable. I went to a startup think tank. They didn't even know what the heck a think tank was. Then, when I went to Google, it was a slightly more interesting decision, or Goldman. Then I quit Goldman. I was like, why would you quit? But part of it is for me to understand that for my parents, stability mattered because they took a risk to come to this country, and it was unstable for them. The biggest risk our parents have taken was to come here. They left their families, they left their comfort zones, they left what they knew to come to a place where they didn't know anything. And they remade it. So understanding that helped me understand that when I made my decisions, it made them uncomfortable. But you know what? I give them credit. They've been there every step of the way. They've come along. They've supported us. And for my brother to live in India for 12 years, to run a nonprofit when he had just graduated from Harvard, was not comfortable for them. For my sister to quit a job as a U.S. attorney in San Diego to then go run an organization in India was not comfortable for them. So I give them credit, but you have to be comfortable in your choice first. You can't ask them to be comfortable for you. You have to be there. If you're there, they'll come with you. But those are hard decisions and they're hard transitions to make. I took 2 years off when I left the government. I didn't work for 2 years. I needed the time to reflect. I needed the time to rethink. I needed the time. I went and lived at home for 2 years. That's not an easy decision. When everybody around you and the world around me was like, the White House is the best time. When you leave the White House, you're going to get the best job possible, so don't waste that opportunity. But I knew the right thing for me was to not take a job. And it was fine. I was offered better jobs, more opportunities after 2 years than I did in the first 2 years. So you just have to have faith in that ability and those choices that you make for yourself. So as you make your choices, be comfortable where you are. Don't worry if others are going to come along, because they will, because you're comfortable.
My name is Shah.
Okay.
So with all of the research, innovation, and collaborations going on in the social sector, what changes, challenges, new opportunities do you think will come from things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So things in the social sector were created at a time. So if you look at the United States, for example, a lot of the social sector organizations were created post-World War II or post the Depression. And the world has changed, right? We're 300 million people today in the United States. And that matters that the world has changed dramatically. So what do the systems need to look like for today as opposed to what it looked like for 100 years ago? That's where I think the change is. New financial instruments. How might we think about financing differently differently than just the government giving more donations or more into the organizations. I'm a big fan of the role of government. By all means do I not, I believe that the government matters. And don't anyone think that the government doesn't matter, because everything we appreciate is because the government does exist. The reason we live in this country, our parents came here, because the government functions. Right? But what we count when we give dollars is the number of people served. We never ask, are their lives better off? Did they graduate from high school? Are their lives better? We're just happy because the only way we know how to count success is the number of people I touched. Did I serve 10,000? Did I serve 15,000? Did I serve 20,000? So what? So we need to rethink financial instruments. We need to rethink how does government, nonprofit, for-profit work together more effectively to solve those problems, because the corporations matter. They're sometimes the biggest players in town, whether you're in a country or whether you're in a community. Not including them doesn't matter. But you know why the nonprofits matter? That's where the heart is. They're the ones that actually understand the communities. They're the ones that understand why things are happening. They understand what's going on in those communities. Don't forget the nonprofits. And that's what needs to change. We need to change the way we think about the social sector. It's not a charity. We always think about it as a charity. I gave my $1, I gave my $5, I'm good. I pay my taxes, the government will take care of it. It's not the way the world works. It matters because we live in it. We take benefit of it. We have benefited from it. So every moment of that is our opportunity to give back at some point. So how might we rethink? If you're in a company, how might your company engage with your community more effectively? If you're in a nonprofit, how do you partner with the government? How do you partner with the business? And if you're government, how do I make sure I'm serving my public well? It's not just about having doled out the money and trying to do the right thing. It's like, how do I make sure I'm getting the feedback on a constant basis to see if we're doing my job? Right here, last one?
Yeah. Hi, you talked, sorry, I like these memories, but
Your name?
Isha, you talked a lot about fear. When you left your job at the White House to go do this, were you scared, and like, how did you cope with that fear and like be able to like take this kind of risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. So probably other places I was more fearful than actually that job, believe it or not. Taking the time off out of the White House is that I was just ready to take time, because I needed the time at that time to reflect on what life had been. I'd worked in a lot of places, right? I worked at Goldman, I was at Google, I was at the White House, we did a nonprofit. There were lots of things happening at the same time, and you need the time sometimes to reflect. I know we take meditation, and meditation helps us reflect, but sometimes you need life to allow you to reflect. What did I learn? What have I done? What am I taking? See, what I did when I left is my grandmother was sick. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I left and moved to Houston and took care of her full time for 9 months until she passed away. My life was completely different. I was not talking to people at the White House. I was not talking to people in government. I was not talking to anybody. I 100% of my time taking care of her. And it was an easy decision because you give it 110% wherever you are. You don't think about what you just left. I think the thing that I've learned in life is not to reflect back on what I've left, but always to think about what's coming next. Because that's really, what you're doing now matters. It doesn't matter what you've given up. And I think that's where a lot of times we are afraid, is that we're afraid that it might not make up for what I did already. I might not add up to, am I popular enough? Am I doing enough? Am I important enough? Did I get the right job? Am I moving up the step ladder? Is it a vertical move? Is it a lateral move? Those are all things that we all think about. The question you have to ask yourself is, are you comfortable? Right? Is that the right decision for you? Because if it's the right decision for you, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. For me, leaving the White House was the right decision for me. I still help a lot of my friends there. I still help out when they need it, but I don't have to be in it to be able to do that. Nor do I have to see the president, nor do I have to do any of those things. It's really about service. It's serving my country in a different way that doesn't have to necessarily be in the place where it's at. But I think it matters that we think about those things on a regular basis. And look, it's a risky move, right? You don't know what's next. I didn't know what was next. And I had 4 job offers, of which I said no to every one of them. So I didn't know where I was going to get money. You start looking at your bank account, and it's starting to go down, there's nothing increasing it. But it's okay. You figure it out, things happen, things come along if you're doing it for the right reasons. And you have to have that belief that it does matter, that it will come along for the right reasons. But it's uncomfortable. I'm not telling you it wasn't for me, but you have to take that time. Thank you all. Thanks for everything. I know there's a soccer game after this here.
Outstanding. One more round of applause, please. Thank you so much. This isn't nearly enough, but we'd like to thank you a little bit for your time and for your wisdom.